Hi everyone. We'll be just talking about how CI/CD works with GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps. We'll just touch upon Azure DevOps and how we are integrating SmartUI for visual testing. So this, I think, I'll just have a landscape test first. How are we looking like? How many devs are there? Just give me a raise of hands. How many students? DevOps. Nice. And QAs? Anybody from the QA landscape? Awesome, awesome. That's why I did not choose anything related to QA. You can see. Yeah, so I'll be touching upon visual testing because how many front end guys, specifically front end people? So most of them are back end. No worries. So yeah, this is my evil twin who had bitter hair, and I'm a product manager at LambdaTest. I'm tackling the product called SmartUI. It's basically tackling the problem of visual testing. It's a cloud-based visual regression tool. What is visual testing? What is visual regression? I would like to maybe know from you if anybody is aware. Anybody has ever tried visual testing in their pipelines, especially the devs? Nobody. That's what I wanted. So that's why we are touching upon a very niche landscape, which I think should be known to more people because of the bugs that are arising more nowadays, especially in the B2C platforms, in the platforms which are front end heavy. So yeah, about me again, I'm managing a product. When I'm not managing a product, I'm playing cricket over the weekends and picking people's brain over LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. So what is CI? I think half of the people are here are DevOps and devs. So CI you are much aware of. We can integrate our CI pipelines. We have multiple people integrating us into a source repo, and then we are going to a CNCF server that is building, testing, and giving us results. We can, what's the benefits? We can detect errors as early as possible in the build process, right? Why do we need CI and what's the best process to do CI? It's actually, if you don't write any CI tests, you will not face any problem. So that's the best thing to do. The second best thing to do is actually combine it with CD. That's the continuous delivery or continuous deployments, if we call it in the better state. What's the difference? I'll just come on to the next slide. But yeah, continuous delivery is that whenever the code is ready, it can be delivered at any time. So basically, CI is putting a puzzle pieces together, and then CD is ready to give that puzzle to, let's say, to present that puzzle. Continuous deployment, on the other hand, in terms of continuous delivery, we have a manual check. Let's say sometimes we need to have a manual check to make sure that, okay, whatever we are deploying is correct. Continuous deployment will mean that, okay, no manual checks are required and everything is automated, which in an ideal world is a very good scenario and we not need anything, but we all know how that works, and production bugs are how common every developer know, and how many of you guys are tortured by the product managers. I myself do it to my desk, so very sorry for that. How does CI/CD process looks in practice? I think you will not be able to see this particular. You have a pointer, yeah. So if you see, this is let's say a cloud infra, how it generally works in any service or in any product as such, that we have monitoring tools, we have clouds. Let's say you have GCP or AWS and eCloud, and then we have, let's say, infrastructure as a SaaS. Here, an example of Ansible is given. If you see here, we can see Dockerization, containers. It's a very good picture actually to understand what's a cloud landscape looking like. Here you can see an app being deployed in multiple environments. So it's basically seeing that, okay, we might have a staging environment, we might have a production environment. For students, I think I did not want to go in very deep, also because I'm a PM. Yeah, and here we can see how CD is actually helping the process and how source control is working. So it's basically a cantilever belt that will help you to code, then commit changes, build, test, deploy to staging, automatic test, deploy to production, maybe deploy to a pre-dev environment, etc., etc. Yeah, what are the CI/CD tools that are in the market? So sorry. Yeah. So either they can be an open source tool like, let's say, Argo and others. They can be like enterprise softwares like GitLab. They can be Azure DevOps. We have Harness. We have GitHub. And then we have monitoring tools. Harness and GitHub also have some monitoring tools. And we have managing tools like Jira, which everybody of you hates. And then notification tools like Slack. And how every one of these building, testing, deployment, running, monitoring, and managing notification softwares are communicating with each other It's technically how a CI/CD pipeline should be end to end. So it's not just, let's say, building, testing, deploying, and running. Monitoring, managing, and notification are also, take a big uh, part of it. And I think you have already, Abhishek, talk about observability and everything is working. So I'm not going deep into that. So I think if you like pipelines, you can put CI/CD over CI/CDs and then go on, go on, go on. I'll maybe have an example that how we test LambdaTest. We test LambdaTest through LambdaTest. So we are writing automation code for our automation code. So this is how I think I like to present it. What is actually GitHub Actions? Most of you, I'm hoping, uses GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions is an automation platform that allows you to define custom workflows for your GitHub repositories. GitHub Actions basically has 6 major components. There are workflows, there are events. There are workflows, there are events, there are jobs, there are steps, there are actions, there are runners. The runners are basically, they can be self-hosted, they can be GitHub hosted. And then a typical workflow, I'll show you how SmartUI and SmartUI GitHub Actions to actually CI pipelines. So then maybe we can see a sample here. So any GitHub event has a simple workflow. You have your particular OS that using the matrix builds to allow parallel running, and obviously any language support is there. What is that? Your DevOps is also doing is your pipelines. You might be already aware of. Your pipelines is an analog to GitHub Actions, and then we have the other parameters of Azure DevOps like boards, which is helping the management, reports. That's again helping the observability and reports, test plans, and artifacts. So not going deep into that, I think there has been a lot of talk about everything, and I don't want to maybe make you guys sleep. Functional testing. So this is where we guys come in. Oh, I think devs, how many of you guys are writing tests on a regular basis? So unit testing, even functional tests, anyone? Any devs? Awesome, that's an awesome practice, honestly, because we recently conducted a survey and around 40 to 45% of devs around the globe. So the survey was taken by around 2,600 plus people, and around 46% of them, I think it was 26,000 to be honest. 45% of them are actually writing codes as devs, because first of all, it's not that hard to write automation tests now after the introduction of what we call as generative AI, maybe Claude, maybe GPT, whatever you're writing. And secondly, it's better to not, listen from the QA that, "Oh, bro, what you have done, how bad of a coder you are." Nobody likes to hear that. So it's good if you are doing it. It's also good if you're not doing it, because testing is not fun. Yeah. So how we are actually testing in general is, we have engineering team, we have QA team, then we deploy it, then we go to GTM, right? Testing can be end-to-end UI testing, API testing, data testing. In the end-to-end UI testing, we have manual testing and automation testing. Manual testing, the least fun job to do. Automation testing, we automate things, take more time than manual, and then rewrite the automation test again and again till we are actually able to write a good automation test. So, but there is one thing missing. How are we checking whether visually we are fine or not? Okay, manual testing, we can find, okay, the button is right there, we are clicking the right places. Automation testing, you can write, okay, this selector is present or not, this ID is present or not, this particular image should be there or not. But how do we know that this image is correct? How do we know that this image was supposed to be there? How do we know that the size of this image is fine? So all of this cannot be tackled via these normal testing processes. And when you are a front-end heavy, it's a software, a website, maybe you are a media website, maybe you are, let's say, Amazon, Flipkart, in e-commerce. So our biggest customer is a media website, and they are very front-end heavy. So these things will not help them. The best thing they can get help with, the best thing they can get help with is actually doing front-end checks for visual testing. So if you see this particular place, this sort of a visual bug appeared one day when I was presenting my customers, and I am a visual tester. Like, my product is doing visual testing, so it's something that I should not have, presented to my customer. Again, this sort of a visual bug again came one day, This was an overflowing drop-down menu sort. I presented it like a feature because I had no other option to do. So functional testing will tell you whether this behaves correctly or not. Visual testing will tell you, do I look correct? So basically it's having a girlfriend that actually tells you, okay, maybe you're looking fine. Office fans, this is for you. Visual testing, if corporate needs you to find the difference between the picture, the pictures, they are the same pictures. Thanks visual testing tool. Thank you SmartUI. So why are we so bad at shipping software that looks correct? Because the odds are not in favor and nobody here knew visual testing. So again, what's the problem in actually manually checking? Okay, let's say I know was is my colleague, but I had to ask. So Abhishek goes on my website, right? He opens SmartUI. Let's say he opens LambdaTest and sees this on his iPhone 15. It looks fine, but I go to my let's say MI Note whatever and see that website is not looking fine because visual testing had not happened and it was not checked whether visually it was looking fine in all of the browsers, all of the resolutions, and all of the devices or not. So these combinations are endless, and these endless combinations needs to be checked by a person. Either you can make someone sit and see your website regularly, or you can use an automated software that does this for you. What do? We actually capture and compare the screenshots automatically as your application evolves, right? So let's say there is a baseline that is set of your website. You have a 10 set of flows. You log into a place, you go to 3, 4, 5 links, and then you log out. All of these have set of actual functionings that you want to have all the time. Even if let's say your button is being changed, the color of the button is getting changed, font size is getting changed, whatever. This particular is the visual changes you will want to get highlighted only when you will want ideally to get highlighted. You don't want any other change to maybe oversee or supersede these changes. So let's say you have just changed a heading, but it ended up changing the padding and whatever. So those changes were not intended. So by creating a baseline, you're making sure that the next set of builds are getting compared to the baseline of that particular visual test. Let's say the 10 test cases I said, and then the next set of builds, if you can, even if you're
there was a minor change in the UI. For example, the button was shifted from left to middle. And do you need to change that visual test in order to bypass or pass that, or there is a self-healing capability like other visual test companies?
you are talking specifically about the product. Yeah. So we have the approach. So let's say you have there is something called as a layout comparison. I think you are referring to that. Maybe you're not. So there are two approaches to that. This would be a very specific question to answer. Let's say if you have a button over the left hand side and you have shifted it to center, the baseline would obviously say, okay, it's not matching. Is it a intended change? What you can do is, okay, yes, this is an intended change and I'm going to approve it. And the next set of comparison will run over this baseline. This is the traditional behavior. Let's say you don't want to flag it out even. You want to compare it with the baseline that had the button on the left. So there is a feature called layout comparison where you can specify that particular region and then the layout, even if it's shifting and you can define whatever the shifts are. So let's say if it is within your expectation, that would even not get flagged. So it's all very customizable. Obviously, SmartUI as a tool is evolving. We are coming up with, let's say everybody is getting AI first now. I just go on and on about how we are going AI first again, and we are trying to solve these problems, and we are trying to reduce the manual interventions at all if required. But I think that would be just out of the talk, and we can maybe talk everything about the product a bit later. But I hope that answers the question. Thank you. Yeah. So this was a bit about visual testing. We'll just next slide you will be able to visualize it as well. So the endless combination of devices. Okay. So this is a UI screen. What we do actually we capture your browser DOM. Your HTML DOM we will capture and we'll spin up our own servers. And then we'll actually render it on multiple browsers and resolutions and then take screenshots. So in order to make sure that even we are making sure that all of these resolutions and device combinations are getting adhered to. So you don't have to do the manual work of seeing it with your eyes, or even writing again and again different test cases to make sure that every browser resolution combination you're working they are working fine. So in this image, it's a very good actual example, and my manager created this example. I remember that this can be a baseline. If you see left hand side, there is a blue, red, and again a bluish shoe. Here, when a similar image is here, a similar image is present, this is getting approved. So if you see on the left image, and the above image is same, but the below image, this is the right, it's the red shoe that appears at the right hand side, and it's getting rejected. Either it can get rejected automatically or manually, depends on how you are putting your test in. But this is what a basic visual regression test looks like, and it's much more complicated than this, but we can talk about it in case required. So why it's actually required? Because 61% of the users are unlikely to return to a site on a mobile if they had trouble accessing it on the first time. Obviously, nobody would want a bad UX. If you have a visual bug, that's the worst kind of bug actually. Even functionality is changed, I'll refresh it, but it's looking really bad. Why would I even try to solve that problem? What sort of a new front-end engineer you are? I'll say. Then 40% of the users move to competitor's website if they cannot access your site. So if in case you're working for a competitor from your own company, this can be a very good way to actually boost their sales. 53% of mobile website visits are abandoned. Pages take longer than 3 seconds to load. So this is an API response. Again, it's not a visual testing thing, but yeah. And 58% of all mobile devices purchase using mobiles to close the sale. So we have to be like the pixel perfect over mobiles, because nowadays everything is handy and we want it over devices. So SmartUI again. Now we'll actually introduce SmartUI. So this is an old picture, this is a new picture. We show the differences to make sure that these are intended or not intended. LambdaTest again, just putting it in. LambdaTest is a test orchestration company that will allow you to test intelligently and shift faster. We are again going AI first and disrupting the market. See, this is how our product looks like. So this multiple browser resolutions, some integrations like Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions, Slack, Jenkins, Figma. Figma again, it's as a worldwide design tool, and everybody needs to compare the designs to a production. This is one problem we are not able to solve it, and we are working on it. Multiple frameworks like Selenium, Java, Selenium, Playwright, Puppeteer, CDP, Storybook. Storybook is something I'll also get to maybe in the later stage of the talk. So how we are actually capturing the screenshot? So it's very basic. If you have ever tried to write a functional test, maybe any sort of test, you have your drivers. Maybe if you are written in Selenium, pages if you are written in Playwright. So you write your code. Okay, this is there. I'll go. This URL I'll go. This particular elements I'll get clicked. So one more snippet you just need to add is about every product has its own. We call it the SmartUI snapshot. It takes the driver and the screenshot name, and it actually ends up capturing the screenshot of that particular point where you have specified the, let's say, the functional test in the screenshot test in the functional test. So both of them are working simultaneously. You can actually use, let's say, a cloud to do that. Do it locally, whatever suits your interests. So basically, this particular element gets captured in case you are capturing an element. How does SmartUI work with CI? So when we push the code, your CI will run. Either the visual integration test checks which you have put in your CI, either they'll pass or they'll fail. If they'll fail, if it is an intended change, we'll update the baseline. If it is not an intended change, we'll fix the code. It's very, very basic, just like how your normal CI pipeline works. SmartUI plus GitHub Actions. So this is a sample YAML file that you'll actually be using with in case you are utilizing SmartUI and visual testing with GitHub Actions. So just it's a very simple workflow. On pull request, we are on pull request to the master branch. We are doing something. We are specifying a project token in the environment and actually executing a test that runs on Ubuntu. And this is a GitHub API key that we are returning some payload to. We are installing some dependencies and running a test. Very, very basic. Yeah. To specify this. So these are two checks that are running when we are running a SmartUI GitHub action. One is the GitHub action check, whether the GitHub action is correctly working or not. And the second is the SmartUI check. So this CI pipeline will have two checks that will first it give me whether that build was built with the action was running, and even if that was running successfully, whether I had any changes in my visual tests or not. That's like the main goal of obviously when you are doing visual testing over here. So this first screenshot that you see, it shows the green tick here because it was a baseline screenshot, and baseline screenshot does not have anything to get compared with. So we'll obviously approve it. Then second says that okay, some checks were not successful, and where it failed, we can see is LambdaTest smartly total number of screenshots one is under screening, means there is some changes in one screenshot. You can go to the dashboard, approve it again here, and the cross would turn to a tick. So it's I have a demo video to show, and I'll just quickly go through it because I know some of it is going as overcode for you. This maybe if I try to run this. If this runs. You want to do right? Let's see if this runs here. It would break. No way. Just play the demo please. Any questions?
Hi Jeevesh, thanks for wonderful insight. I just wondering if you have given any thoughts on accessibility testing.
LambdaTest in general or SmartUI? Like let's say
I'm looking for the NVDA.
compliance purposes, right?
Yes.
So in LambdaTest we have an offering called accessibility testing, both manual and automated. And because we all know that 2020 post 2025 company, in fact, it has to work in Europe and US. It has to be accessibility compliant with WCAG AA. So we have already launched a couple of our products called manual automation testing and automated automation testing, and both of them are available with LambdaTest, by which you can generate reports of your accessibility, even gather some insight and some fixes if required. With regards to only visual checks that accessibility needs, so basically three kinds of visual checks are there. All of them are contrast related. So there's a feature that's coming up within this year with SmartUI only, because we have your DOM, right? So we'll tell you where exactly those contrast problems are, and we'll also tell you the solutions of those contrast problems. So that would be an RCA to that particular contrast problem. Why we are tackling this issue is because firstly, everything needs to be accessible, right? Most of us are, by God's grace, we can see fine and other things, but the differently able folks need to have those particular, let's say colors or in other functions ready to use. So that's why the need of accessibility, in case anybody is wondering. Yeah.
The LambdaTest. So if as in being in PM, like I want to get monitor the log exactly if I have a request for my developers to make some merges into the main platform. So
Yeah.
being in as in PM assign some task to particular person. At example at 8 a.m. and for that deadline is for 2 days to be done. But if suppose some developer has completed his task as per the requirement and has pushed back thing into the back to the main repository, but still some X time. So does we get the logs like when someone committed back and close that ticket or the ticket I would use the word the task which is aligned.
So
You get the log?
Very sorry. I'll tell you how generally, if it's again a PM centric question, but how generally this works in two ways. I'm assuming you're using GitHub with Azure DevOps. So either you can use a GitHub Azure DevOps integration that actually inputs the time over which the PR was made and it was marked as successful, and that particular time is tracked over Jira in case you need Jira. But Azure DevOps also has a reporting platform that tracks the time, but the best integration would have to actually have Jira integrated with your Azure DevOps and GitHub workflow. Jira has that feature, to actually check whether how fast you have done it and what's the time spent on that ticket. And the reporting features over Jira, I think you are aware of. If you're not
Yes.
using it, they are wonderful. Although I also
It
personally,
is not in Azure.
I
It
just
is in Jira and Kibana both right now.
I've not seen Kabana, but yeah, Jira has a very like this is how I do it generally. This is these three products I use in a combined manner to have the best insights. So this is like I think the best solution. Anybody who's aware about the better solution, please feel free to correct me there.
This year.
Any other question?
The UX team gives the test cases in a language called Cucumber.
Yeah.
And are there can automatically test these Cucumber test cases?
So Cucumber test cases also can be integrated with SmartUI or any visual testing tool. Let's not only talk about SmartUI. So the integration is fairly simple. There are a couple of hooks, a couple of functions, and those particular Cucumber tests either can be translated or can be used directly with a visual testing tool. And in case you're looking for documentation, I can maybe send it over or tell you. But it's like just adding a couple of functions wherever you need to take the screenshot, and whatever the visual tests you want to take, then those would ideally appear on the dashboard, even if it's an open source visualization tool, not only SmartUI.
Thanks.
No worries. Yeah.
Ratios compared as proportion to because there could be multiple devices.
Agreed. That's a really good question, and the most naive question is the best question you can ask. How we are comparing, like, okay, we can't compare Apple to mangoes, right? Abhishek's iPhone 15 can't be compared to my MI Note, whatever version was there. So the way we do it and the way generally this industry works is to take the screenshots. Let's say I'm doing it over 4 different browsers, Edge, Safari, Chrome, and Firefox, over 2 different resolutions. Let's say 1920 and 1366, and over 2 devices, iPhone 15 and Galaxy S26. So that the combination would have 4 cross 2 cross 2 makes around 16 screenshots, and each variant, so we call it variant, other people might call it other things. So each screenshot now has 16 variants. So one variant I'll know in name would be Chrome 1966 over let's say Chrome on 1966 of that particular screenshot. So now that screenshot would be compared with the same name screenshot. Let's say the screenshot is called what's your name? Rahul. Let's say the screenshot is called Rahul. So Rahul on Chrome on 1966 viewport would be compared to Rahul's Chrome on 1966 when the next build is run. That's how we are. So Rahul on iPhone 15 would be compared to Rahul on iPhone 15, say on MI.
What is the delta that is acceptable between the differences?
So generally it's 1 pixel over a particular, let's say a 12 pixel radius. But what we as a product do is let you define the delta. We have a concept of custom mismatch there, where you can define what percent of visual test mismatch is acceptable to you. So it's advised to have it 1%, but again depends on how your tests are written and how your visual, even the landscape and the website is looking like. If it has a lot of pixels, even 1% can create a lot of difference. So it all depends on how the website is looking like. But this is a very good question, good problem to have for an AI-based perspective to learn about a user's test and actually predict the delta that is more custom for you. So this is one way we are trying to lessen the manual problem here. So again, as you said, I can give you 1% on my own because we have some backing to it, but does not work everywhere. And the best solution is to actually learn through your DOM and what the changes have been and create a delta there. You were able to answer? Yeah.
This tool is for browsers only or for apps also?
It is for both websites. So websites and apps. So websites can be rendered on mobile devices and also can be rendered on desktops. And apps can only be rendered on mobile devices. It's also can be used with emulators, simulators, maybe virtual devices if you are familiar with. So it's for every.
So if I build application, suppose it's an Android application and I'm building within the pipeline, so then I'll be able to test it within the pipeline itself, right?
Within the pipeline itself, we have something called an So the apps are generally tested by an framework called called as Appium, or via, let's say, Android apps are tested via Espresso as well. Both of the support you have with this product, and in general with visual testing products. And with the pipeline, it's very basic to add. You have to just change the YAML and the runner commands, and everything works very well with the integration.
Great.
Yeah.
I know you said that Figma is on the charts, but with Figma, do you have any roadmap that once you introduce Figma, will you still be checking the delta with the runs, or Figma will be the only baseline and then every time you will compare the delta with it?
So Figma, again, it should be a separate offering. It will not change how visual testing works, because I believe visual testing should not be compared with Figma. Any front-end guy should not be asked to make whatever exact Figma design that nobody can do it. I've not seen anyone do it, and we have really good folks on front-end here. So again, it depends on how your engineering team works like. But I believe we'll not be moving to only having baselines to Figma, if I may sound it like that. We currently have a Figma CLI though, which is, I think, the only offering in the market that allows you to automate your Figma to Figma comparison, because that makes more sense. Because whatever, just like how a website is changing, your Figma designs are also changing. So that you can do. We also have a workaround of how you can get your Figma designs with your production websites. But that again does not make sense, because Figma designs are PNG images, and comparing that to a HTML rendered or any browser is not right. So converting into both of them to PNGs and comparing, no, the results would be very flaky. But the solution that we are talking about is to actually create a Figma baseline build and have it rendered over browsers to mimic the behavior of websites. This is a very hard problem that I'm finding. I'm trying to solve it, but it will not change anything that visual testing already does. And the baselines still would be allowed to be obviously websites, depending on the project type you have chosen. And also you can test your Figma with the production URL. That's a problem. It's a very big problem, and I think I've found a couple of good tools to do that. So I'm just trying to solve this problem with SmartUI as well. Any other question next? Should I just start the demo? Thank you. So this is typically our dashboard. I just pause whenever I do. These are the checks that I showed you. You can see there are two ticks already present. I hope people in the back can see, but if you can't, there are two ticks that are present here, and one of it is the CI YAML that is run my storybook. Storybook basically is a front-end library. So I think front-end engineers might be familiar with that. Some engineering managers or even back-end devs might be familiar that a centralized library called Storybook might be implemented in your organization, and we just pull or push components from there and make changes accordingly. Storybook is the biggest market for visual regression, and most of the Storybook users combine it with visual testing, because there the most number of changes are happening build by build, and you want to be pixel perfect there to make sure that you are not doing anything bad. So this is the build that has been run. It says a green because all the jobs have run successfully, and the SmartUI GitHub action is also, it says the SmartUI GitHub action check CNCG because I created a project for today's talk, and the total number of screenshots are 32 and approved are 32 because baseline would be approved because we do not have anything to compare it to. Yeah, so just click over details. We just show what all jobs were there and what all checks were there, and there would be creating a static storybook build and executing the builds and taking the screenshots. So all of this happens, and this has been run already. I'll just run one more. It's able to see how can be fast. Yeah. So if you see, I have just changed the button label to, let's say, change for hands-on. So there was a button that was called button before. It's called change for hands-on, and I want to make sure that okay, this is the change that is getting highlighted. So when I run my builds again, so let's say I'm committing to my PR, the YAML would run, the action would run, and compare it to the baseline, and yield me the result whether anything has changed or not in my storybook, so in my front-end library or in my front-end. This makes sense, my website. So if I go to my pull request, it's running and the first action has started. So if I go to the dashboard, so here this was the baseline that was created. And these are the buttons. So this is the button I have not changed. This is the button that I have made that I kept the same. The blue button on the other hand, I have changed and just show you. It was called change for. And let's say these are a total number of 8 test cases with all of them 4 variants, so makes it 32 screenshots. How there are 4 screenshots I will also show you, because we have 4 browsers and 1 resolutions per every screenshot. So your question here, we have like over Chrome, Firefox, Safari, each of them have different screenshots over a particular resolution called 9020. We might also have apps here because Storybook is a website driven, because it was a React app, so it only was for websites. Yeah, so I think something is failed. Let's see. Yes, still running. Yeah, so still running. So my build creating build is still running. So that's why I think we are not able to see new build on SmartUI. So as soon as this particular step completes, we will be able to see a new build over SmartUI. Yeah, it's created. Yeah, this is the sample YAML that I was talking about. That's the name Storybook PR checks. Because we need to identify for what project we are talking about. This is the API host, just to make sure we are communicating with the GitHub correctly. Installing dependencies, creating a build, running the build, and taking screenshot by specifying a config which has the browsers and variants, the resolutions, and devices mentioned over that config to make sure that we are taking the right screenshots over right particular device and browsers. Yeah. So if you see in the action itself, we have generated a report and we can see there are some mismatches already present. So changes found says 4, approved says 28, and total screenshot says 32. So in the action itself, you can see. And on the PR check, we can see 1 tick because the action was completed fine, but 1 cross because there are some changes. And we'll have to actually manually review them to make sure that those checks are, we wanted them to have those changes. If we wanted them, I'll approve it. And if we didn't want them, we'll reject it so that the baseline would be updated accordingly. In case we end up approving those, the baseline would be updated to the newer version that would be changed for hands-on. So here I think the changes are found, and this particular card will have the changes. It says 0.18% change. Rates the change, and it also says where the changes. So the baseline had button, the captured screenshot had changed for hands-on. I hope you are able to see somewhat. Thank you. And there is a 0.18% change. So that's why I mentioned that 1% can be misleading because Storybook elements are smaller. So 1% threshold would mean approving those. Yeah, so I think the demo is fine. Any questions about this demo? I can just go to the next slide. Yes, please go.
Does it work with headless browsers?
Yeah.
And the second, when you're saying you can approve, then after approval the cross will be turned. But that will be a next run.
No. In the actual that has been run, it would be updated in case you want. Your checks would be passed, and you can actually go on and merge that. Yeah. So for me, I have created that action to actually run on the push event. You can change it to merge event or any other event of your choice. Can we go back to the slide, Ashish? Okay, you know, see, okay. So I think that was all. We are hosting the TestView conference. That's the biggest conference around the globe. That will have around 20,000 plus attendees in 3 days. Big speakers, big folks coming in. Multiple sessions around testing, around dev, around software in general, and how you can write, you can be, you're from dev to production, you can be all fine. So feel free to attend this. I have a QR in case you want to register for that event. It's free of course, and you will have your learnings to go. Students who are wanting to get into their industry, we have folks joining in. Feel free to join. Everybody's welcome. And questions are welcome in case you have any. Thanks a lot.